Hey everyone, I wanted to take a few moments to review for the CLEP exam. Alright, so here's what you need to expect. There's two essays, you'll have 70 minutes to complete them. One is an argumentative essay, and I believe earlier I said that the second essay was a rhetorical analysis. That was incorrect. That is a synthesis essay that will be on the CLEP. So they're going to give you two sources and require you to develop an argument based on the information in those two sources. And what they're looking for isn't just can you develop a position based on reading those two sources. They're also going to be looking to see if you can cite things properly. Next, you have 50 multiple choice questions. You have 50 minutes for that. And that's almost like a combination of the ACT English and ACT reading. You have passage analysis, and then you also have grammar and syntax. So let's jump right into it. Writing the argumentative essay. First and foremost, understand that this will be like the argumentative essays you wrote in English 3, where you're using real-world examples. If you guys remember the writer's notebook, we talked about keeping your argument on a leash, L-E-A-S-H, and those stand for the different types of acceptable evidence on an AP essay. Logical reasoning, text evidence or expert testimony, anecdotal evidence, statistical data, and then historical data, or historical, not context, but historical precedent. There we go. So for the argumentative essay, your introduction should, of course, introduce your main argument, but don't start off with your position. Start with a hook sentence that either grabs a reader's attention or establishes background knowledge. It's essential that your reader knows what you're talking about, so enough background information, in other words, enough context, must be provided for your reader to fully understand what you are arguing. I like this graphic, this inverted pyramid. This shows you a really good way to write your introductory paragraph. That we start with a broad overview of the topic of the essay. You identify or generally define the topic. You can have a general statement, questions, or quotations. Part 2, you start to move into giving more background information that will lead to the thesis statement, and then this is your thesis statement developed into a complete sentence. And the reason it says developed into a complete sentence is because you don't want to say something to the effect of, I agree with the prompt. Your essay should stand on its own, free of what the prompt says. And so if you were to hand your essay to a stranger, albeit an educated and well-read stranger, they should be able to fully understand the position you're arguing free of the prompt. So, as the inverted pyramid showed, your hook sentences can be 1 to 2 sentences, and this grabs the reader's attention and is often a broad general statement concerning the theme or big idea that you're arguing. This is not your thesis, nor should evidence appear in your hook sentences. Then you have background information or context, 1 to 2 sentences, and this is the opportunity to state commonly held views on the topic and why the issue is either important or worthy of being discussed. You can start previewing the answer to the question, so what? And then you get to your major claim. And you can do an open thesis or a closed thesis. Either one's fine. I've seen great examples of both. And this is where you introduce your position on the issue with the lesser claims that will support what you are saying. And that would be if you're doing a closed thesis. You preview the lesser claims. So each support paragraph should include a lesser claim as its main point. Then your evidence, 1 is good, 2 is better, 3 is best, and your reasoning, which connects the evidence to the lesser claim and therefore to your argument. And when I say 1 is good, 2 is better, 3 is best, that is 3, of course, is your, honestly, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering, like, did I mean analysis, or am I talking about 3 pieces of evidence for the whole essay? And I would say it's that. You need at least 3 pieces of evidence, or 2 is okay. 2 is good. It says 1 is good. But anyway, let's just disregard that. Every paragraph should have its own evidence and its reasoning, which connects the evidence to the lesser claim and therefore to your argument. Although the simple format for this would be to follow that pattern, claim, evidence, and reasoning, it could result in choppy sentences. Don't be afraid to switch things around if you feel that it's necessary. Here's an example of of a piece with a lesser claim, evidence, and then reasoning. So the future survival of humanity may very well rest on whether or not we can colonize Mars. According to Dr. John Watson, director of NASA, the continued operation of the International Space Station is essential to future Mars missions. If the ISS loses its funding in 2025, then humanity will be set back perhaps indefinitely in terms of creating a habitable home away from home. To defund the ISS is to essentially doom any attempts at doing so. So you see, I've included the evidence, and then I've offered my commentary, which is the part where it says if the ISS loses its funding, humanity will set back indefinitely, and then to defund the ISS is to doom any attempts at doing so. So this is me taking what Dr. John Watson said and connecting it back to my claim. This would be if I'm writing an essay on why we do not need to defund NASA. And so after you have two support paragraphs with your lesser claims, your evidence, your reasoning, this is where you would put in the counterclaim, concession, and rebuttal. And for those that may not remember, this is where you introduce an argument that can be used against you, offer a concession showing that you understand the point that potential opposition could make, and sometimes a concession expresses more than understanding. The opposition may even make a point you agree with. In either case, you have to offer a rebuttal, showing disagreement, exposing faulty logic, or otherwise defeating any attempt one could use to undermine your argument. For example, some may claim that nuclear power is dangerous, that the possibility of fallout, no matter how small that possibility may be, is too great a risk for a city to bear. So I've offered right here a counterclaim and a concession. I'm showing that I'm not necessarily saying I understand it. I'm showing that I do. I show that I understand that, yeah, the possibility of fallout, no matter how small that may be, is too great a risk. But then I go into my rebuttal. This idea completely disregards the decades of technological advancements since the last major man-made nuclear plant meltdown in 1986. After all, it would be difficult to argue that a television from 1986 is somehow superior in technology to one produced in 2018. Therefore, any attempt to undermine the benefits of nuclear power using scare tactics should be disregarded. So I have completely defeated the argument that somebody may say, well, nuclear power is dangerous, and that even if it's a 1% chance of fallout, that's too much. Okay, so then you go into the synthesis essay, and if you don't mind for 1 second, I'm going to check my time. Screencast-O-Matic gives 15 minutes per video, and I'm about halfway through. So when the essay parts on here are done, I'll move on to grammar. But I'll end part 1 at the ending of the essays. So the synthesis essay, you have to use information from the sources provided to support your argument. Whether you paraphrase or quote, you must cite the source. And for some reason it skipped this slide. What is the synthesis essay? It's going to require you to synthesize two sources to answer a prompt. This prompt will often ask you to support or defend a position, refute a position, contrast two ideas, or compare two ideas. And like I said, you have to cite the source, whether you paraphrase it or quote it. CLEP will more than likely use a source without an author. When they do that, cite the article title. If they don't have both, cite the container. Just go back to the stuff we went over when talking about Guy Ray. And this gets into grammar. So what we'll do is we will stop right here. I'll create a separate video for grammar, and we'll call it right there. So be well and message me with questions.